Hello, welcome today to today's seminar, Gut Instinct, Eating for Better Digestive Health. My name is Lisa Sakos, and I'm here with Heather Kramer. We're from the Health Coach Collaborative, and today we're talking about improving your digestive system. Thank you for signing into the seminar today. I will try and keep it brief and provide you with lots of information. The reason we're doing this session today is because we are so excited to launch our brand new and improved Digestive Health and the Human Microbiome course. It was one course and now it's so bulked up and there's been so much content and very updated content, like the latest studies added to it, and it's now in 3 parts. So we're very excited to offer a discount to anyone who's interested in learning this course. You can save $100 with the code DIG100 at the checkout, and I'll put this up again at the very end. Now, you might have heard that we eat first with our eyes, right? Well, that's actually true. The sight of food activates a series of neurological reflexes and pathways that prepares us for digestion. But that's just the beginning. We eat with all of our senses. Actually, first we see food that looks absolutely delicious, or maybe if you walk by a bakery, you may notice that the smell of food just stimulates some of your senses, making you suddenly hungry. You might notice that you're salivating. You might suddenly feel like absolutely ravenous. Digestion actually begins before food enters your mouth. So the sight of food, the smell of food, even the thought of food, or maybe you step out into the backyard and you hear your neighbor barbecuing and you can smell, some wafts are moving into wafting into your neighborhood, the aromas of whatever is being barbecued, and suddenly you find yourself absolutely ravenous. So this all happens in your head before you even put a bite of food into your mouth. And this is actually very important because your brain actually prepares your body to make the acids and the juices that are necessary in order to digest food. Now, more than 20 million Canadians have digestive disorders, suffer from digestive disorders each and every year. They're so prevalent, in fact, that a lot of us don't even realize that common symptoms like bloating and gas and indigestion or constipation are symptoms. They're so normal to many, many people. They don't even realize that they're symptoms that need to be addressed because they will have long-term consequences if they are not. The economic impact of poor digestive health is astronomical, and many, many sick days are taken each year as a result of ulcers or hemorrhoids or irritable bowel syndrome. It's one of the most common complaints I hear about from clients. A few years ago, I was the nutritionist for the Toronto Police Service, and I would say that more than half of the employees that I worked with had some kind of digestive problem, especially heartburn or acid reflux, because of the stress and the hours and the type of diet. So we'll address a few of those today very briefly. The course, of course, goes into each and every one of those conditions in much more thoroughly. So let's take a quick look at what your digestive system looks like. Now, really, it's a tube. So if you cut yourself open, you can pull this tube out, pour some water or fluid into the mouth, and it would go right through the tube and come out the bottom through the rectum and then the anus. So it starts with your mouth, of course. You chew, and mastication is a very important step. We'll go through all these steps today. And then down a long tube called the esophagus, and it plops into your stomach once it passes through a sphincter. Spends a little bit of time in your stomach, 1 to 3 hours, and then into your small intestine, which is a very long tube, thin tube, narrow tube, and then the final stage is through your large intestine, which you can see there's 3 parts to it. How do I annotate here? Here we go. So you can see the large intestine starts on your right side. It goes up, whoops, sorry, across, that's the transverse colon, down, and then out. And what you've got sitting here, what's sitting here right now is the last meal or 2 meals that you ate. This is this is your most recent meal on this side. And then this was the one you had before, and this was from maybe a day or yesterday sometime. So food leaves your body in the order that that it went in. So you want to make sure that that's flowing pretty much on a regular, basis, and you're having a bowel movement every day. But I'm going to address that in a little while. Okay. So where do things go wrong? Because really it's simple. It's a simple tube, in and out, right? It shouldn't be too complicated. But as you saw, there are so many digestive conditions, and that was really just the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many more than what was on that slide. But where we get into trouble is because digestion is not just about what we eat, but how we eat. And this is where we have a very important influence. So looking at some of these lifestyle solutions, really, you can improve your digestion even without changing your food. So the first one that is really problematic because of the lifestyle that we lead is rushing or eating in a hurry. In the morning, we don't have a lot of time. We're scrambling to get out. And of course, most of us would rather get that extra 5 minutes of sleep than spend 5 minutes chewing our food and taking time to eat properly, right? So we eat when we're in a rush. A lot of us eat at our desk. About 40% of us are sitting at our desk eating or watching TV while we're eating. And when you're eating in front of the TV, most of the time, what are we watching? We're watching the news, we're watching something dramatic, we're watching something emotional. We're not really in a relaxed, calm state when we're watching television. In fact, most of the shows that we're watching put our body in the fight or flight mode. So you're either in fight or flight or you're in rest and digest. You can't be in both at the same time. So either you're resting and digesting so that you can eat calmly and making the digestive juices that are necessary to break down your food, or your body is in a state of stress, which means that your digestion is not working optimally, if at all. So the first thing we need to do is to calm down. Take 5 minutes. That's all it takes to eat for most of us, right? 5 minutes. Let's just put everything, turn the TV off, turn the computer off, go sit somewhere else, sit by yourself if possible, and just focus on your food. This is part of mindful eating, and take your time to chew and to focus on your food. So what else? Stressful conditions I mentioned. As we get older, your body will make fewer digestive enzymes, and that can be problematic for a lot of us. I'm doing a lot of work in the menopause space right now. In fact, a book that both Heather and I helped write is called Nourishing Menopause. It is at the top of the charts right now, number 9 on the Globe and Mail bestseller list. It's number 4 as of today on the Toronto Star bestseller list. It's sold out at Amazon. It's back now, so it's doing super well. But even in Nourishing Menopause, we have a whole chapter on digestion because it slows down as we get older. And many of my clients who are in menopause will complain, I used to be able to eat this, and now I find every time I eat this food, I get gas or bloating, or now I have a sensitivity to it, or some other issue that that they deal with. Okay, so as we get older, it does become a problem, and that's when we have to focus on the rules of digestion that I'm going to share with you in a minute, even more so. And then, of course, what you eat is important too. So when you have a poor diet with a lot of ultra processed foods, or you have big meals with too many different ingredients, that can be difficult for your body to digest, especially if it's already impaired to some degree. So simple meals, just maybe 2 or 3 items on your plate instead of a smorgasbord of options, and you'll notice that your digestion starts to improve. And finally, inadequate chewing. We eat very, very quickly. We don't take time to eat. So chewing is your digestive superpower. This is really the biggest influence you have on digestion, other than putting yourself in a calm, rest, and digest state. So what does chewing do? Well, it accomplishes a lot, but I want you to think of it as the on button to your digestive system. Now, hopefully you've already put yourself in that nice parasympathetic state so you can relax and prepare your body for digestion. But once you're there, chewing, you saw that tube, each part of that tube has a function, it has a role. It's like pushing the on button on that assembly line. So it starts the process of digestion further down, because we want to prepare the stomach. We don't want to surprise the stomach with food just showing up. We want to prepare the stomach by letting it know, and the more you chew, the more it lets your stomach know that food is on the way. That's why when you chew gum, sometimes you get super hungry because your stomach is waiting for food and it's not coming. So sometimes chewing can help with digestion, chewing gum, but sometimes it just makes you want to eat all the time. So, pay attention to your body, be mindful and figure out what your body is telling you. All right, so number one, mastication will break food into smaller pieces. The more work you do up here, the less work the rest of your digestive system has to do. And that is absolutely critical, especially as you get older, especially if there's an impairment in your digestive system somewhere. Also, saliva plays a very significant role in digestion. In fact, we start breaking down starchy foods right in the mouth. Bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, cereals, granola, desserts, like most of our sweet desserts are carbohydrates. The more we chew, the more we can break those down right in the mouth, which is great because then again, that takes the burden off digestion further down. And then finally, you get better nutrient absorption and just less pressure on your stomach, which means less bloating, less gas, less flatulence, and overall better gut health. So chew, chew, chew as often as you can. Now we don't have to do the 30, chews every bite. That's not necessary, of course, but the more you chew, the better. All right, so the next step in the digestive process is the stomach. So your food, which is called a bolus, now that you've chewed it, the bolus will pass down your esophagus. There's a sphincter there that when it senses there's food present, it will open up and allow the bolus to plop inside. And when I say plop, imagine something dropping into a glass of water because that's similar. So the stomach is really a sac and it can hold, I believe, up to 4 liters of liquids and solids, which is quite a lot. And of course, it will stretch to accommodate food. Now, there is a point where most of us will feel full, and at that point, you stop eating. There are some people and some animals that don't have that apostat, that signal that tells them when they're full, so they can keep eating, which is quite dangerous. But most of us will continue. So just as an aside here, part of mindful eating is recognizing when you're satisfied versus when you're full. So this is something that I encourage my clients to practice is stopping before you get that sensation of fullness. All right. Now, the stomach, pardon me, has 4 layers in its wall. And each of those 4 layers will make they have glands, they're lined with glands, and each of those glands will make different digestive juices. One that is extremely important is called hydrochloric acid, which is represented as HCl. Now, what happens in the stomach is your protein is digested here. So important to know because we eat so much protein and more so nowadays than ever before. But a lot of people are not digesting their protein or they feel very uncomfortable or full or loggy after eating protein, even in small amounts, partially because their stomach is not making enough hydrochloric acid to help break down the protein. You need hydrochloric acid in order to make pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme that another gland in the stomach will make that also digests protein. So there's a lot going on in the stomach that's mostly associated with protein, but also what's happening in there is that all the food that you've eaten is getting a nice soak. It's having a bath in all those digestive juices, and those elements are disintegrating. That food is breaking down from larger particles into smaller particles. Now, this is so important. So I want you to picture a steak. Let's say you just had a steak and you chewed your steak, but maybe not that well. So you've got some chunks of meat because there's only so much you can chew until you have to swallow, right? If you're eating a steak. You swallow that steak. Now you want that really strong acid in your stomach to disintegrate that steak so that those long chains of proteins can break down into shorter chains of proteins. Now, it is one of the strongest acids you will find. In fact, on the pH scale, stomach acid is somewhere between 1.5 to 3.5. It's in the same category as battery acid. If you were to put just a drop of stomach acid on a piece of wood, it would eat right through the wood. I know that sounds terrifying, but this is how we're designed. This is what we're meant for. And what do? We take Antacids, we drink lots of fluids with our meals. We do everything we can to work against this acid so that the pH goes up, which means that our stomach pH is more alkaline and isn't capable of digesting the proteins that we eat as efficiently. So we want that strong acid in the stomach. Now, when your stomach acid is low or when the pH has gone up because we've done things to interfere with it, your body's going to give you a lot of signs. You might get bloating, indigestion, gas, flatulence, burping, hiccups, acid reflux, and GERD. Now, we seem to think, and of course, our doctors seem to think that acid reflux and even heartburn are associated with with too much stomach acid, with excessive stomach acid. But in fact, 95% of cases are associated with too little stomach acid. So what's happening is that the stomach is churning to try and make acid so it can break down the food that you just ate, and the acid is just not there. So it's churning and churning and churning, and as a result, some of the acid is going to pass through the sphincter back up through your esophagus, sometimes right into your throat, and that's why you'll feel that burning sensation there. So I know that for some of you, this is news, and some of you may have already recognized this, but taking antacids where you turn off the acid is not helping your digestion long term. Certainly, I'm not suggesting that you stop taking your antacids, but start looking at some of the other ways to improve digestion so that over time you're not as reliant on those medications. All right. Now, ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, digestion is responsible for how well you absorb nutrients. So, if your stomach acids and juices are low, you may struggle to absorb vitamin B12. Now, vitamin B12 we associate with a vegan diet, but I've worked with many, many clients who are not vegan who are deficient in vitamin B12. They eat lots and lots of meat and animal protein, but they're just not making the another and gastric juice that's called intrinsic factor that needs to bind to B12 and to be carried into the intestines for absorption. So again, that's an effect of poor stomach acid. Calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, those are all they all require large amounts of stomach acid in order to be absorbed. And ironically, zinc helps make stomach acid, and stomach acid helps absorb zinc. So we've got to make sure that we've got enough zinc in our diet overall so that we know that the stomach is working a little bit better. And if you see some undigested food in your stool, like leafy greens, tomato peels, random other foods, that's an indication that perhaps something has gone awry in the stomach. So, how do we improve our stomach acid production? Well, the first thing is to make sure that we are in that rest and digest parasympathetic state before we put the first bite of food in our mouth. As I said, turn off your computer, turn off your TV, don't eat in your car. If you're sitting at a table with people who are making a lot of noise, or your kids are acting up, or you don't like the person sitting next to you, go somewhere else where you could be alone or calm. If you're at your office or your desk, maybe move away for 5 minutes to sit down and eat your food. And before you put a bite in your mouth, take 3 deep cleansing breaths. 3 breaths is all it takes to get your body into the parasympathetic state. So get into the habit of doing that before every meal. And then focus on your chewing as well. Chew until the consistency is so soft that there's not a lot left to chew. If it helps to say, I'm going to count 20, I'm going to chew 20 times or 30 times, do whatever works best for you. But think about, again, that mechanical action that you have control over. The more work you can do up here, the less work the rest of your system has to do. As I mentioned earlier, if you're slowing down with your chewing and you're in the parasympathetic state, you're more likely to be more mindful of when you're satisfied versus when you've overdone it, which is so easy to do, and especially if you're distracted. Now, this is an important one. Limit fluids when eating. Now, growing up, I was always on some sort of diet or another, and I was always told to drink 2 big glasses of ice cold water before I eat. My digestion was horrific. I couldn't digest anything without feeling absolutely bloated and full and having gas and just I was over full all the time and I was still overweight. It didn't help me one bit. And I was deficient in a lot of nutrients. So this was a game changer for me. And I find that it works for many of my clients. Rather than drinking with your meals, drink between meals. I think this is a pretty well accepted practice now. Drinking or sipping some fluids with your food can help with mastication, and that's totally fine. But try and keep that the temperature of those fluids on the room temperature side and not cold, because when you drink something, your stomach is up pretty high. So when you drink something, there isn't really enough time for your body to warm up that fluid, and it can shock the glands in your stomach that are responsible for making digestive juices and enzymes. So, room temperature meals, or if it's a cold drink, just keep it in your mouth for a second before you swallow, and less fluids, drink between meals rather than with your meals. Now, because we're really relying on our digestive system once we've swallowed to make digestive enzymes, not only in the stomach, but then further down in the small intestine. But also, there are accessory organs to the digestive system, like the pancreas and the liver. And those they're reliant on your chewing and on what the stomach signals and the small intestine signals in order to make enzymes. And sometimes that sequence just kind of goes off a little bit. So if you find that you're really uncomfortable after eating most meals, or that there are certain ingredients that are particularly troublesome, consider taking a digestive enzyme. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of brands. Every health food store you go into, or you can look online, and you'll find many different types, many options for brands. For most of my clients, I'll recommend a multi enzyme, which has a little bit of everything, something to digest fat, something to digest carbohydrates, and something to digest protein. And some of them have lactase to digest lactose from dairy products. Some have make it a little easier to break down the tough fibers on raw vegetables, or a little bit of gluten support. We don't have a great enzyme for gluten yet. I'm sure it's coming at some point. Bile to help break down fat, which is particularly important if you've had your gallbladder removed. You can get a bile enzyme. It's just bile and nothing else. Bile is not actually an enzyme, but you can get one that in the same section at the health food store of the other enzymes. So you've got a lot of different options, but the multi-zymes pretty much cover everything. And another option, if you don't want to rely on pills, and by the way, if you're going to take these, you want to take one or maybe two if you're going to eat a very large meal, or if you're at a buffet or a party or wedding, before you eat. And if you still feel uncomfortable afterwards, sometimes I'll take one after and find that it's quite helpful. But the goal is to increase acidity in your stomach to help break down protein. So you can do that a few different ways. One very popular way is to take some apple cider vinegar, and you can do a little capful in just a very small amount of water before you eat, just 2 or 3 minutes before you eat, or 10 if you like. Another benefit of the apple cider vinegar is that it helps balance your blood glucose levels when you've eaten, which is very nice because we all need a little bit of extra help with that nowadays. So those are some good and easy options. Oh yeah, lemon juice is another one. Even starting your day with a good squeeze of fresh lemon juice into a small glass of water to stimulate your digestive process for the day, or just a small amount of lemon before you eat. It doesn't have the same effect on your blood glucose as the apple cider vinegar, as the acetic acid in vinegar. And by the way, for blood glucose regulation, it could be any type of vinegar, not just apple cider vinegar. But for digestion, you want the apple cider, which also is a fermented food and has some probiotics in it. I'll be talking about that in a bit. Okay, so the next stage. So after your food has had a really good soak in the stomach, it's going to pass into your small intestine, which is not small at all. In fact, it's a 10-foot long, highly convoluted tube, but it's much more narrow than the large intestine. So that's why it's called the small intestine. Now, the small intestine is such an interesting organ. It's lined with these finger-like projections that look like shag carpeting. They're called villi. Here's another close-up of the villi. And these kind of sway around. And as food is passing through, enzymes are shooting in there and taking carbohydrates from longer chains of carbs to single glucose units, which then get sucked into your villi and pass into your bloodstream and go to your liver. And certain other nutrients will go directly into your bloodstream. So, depends what you're eating. Some go right to your liver, some go right into your bloodstream, into your blood supply. Now, let's go back for a second because the 90% of digestion occurs in the small intestine. Now, at this point, we have no control over what's going on. Now, unlike the stomach, unlike the mouth, at this point, it's up to your body and your accessory organs to make the enzymes that are responsible for the final stage of digestion here. So your small intestine is going to make maltase, lactase, sucrase, and peptidase, which break down both carbs and protein. Your pancreas is going to produce amylase, lipase, and proteases, which break down all three carbs, fats, and proteins. And finally, your liver is going to make bile, which is responsible for fat digestion and absorption. Now, some conditions that are common to the small intestine: celiac disease, where you absolutely cannot eat gluten because gluten, just remember the villi here, right? It's like shag carpeting. Gluten is a heavy protein that goes into your small intestine and like mows the villi down like a lawnmower, making it flat, a flatter surface. So as food is passing through there, the nutrients can't be absorbed, which is why someone with gluten issues or even gluten intolerance eventually will end up with very severe nutritional deficiencies. So it's important to protect those villi. And if you do have signs of gluten intolerance, it's a good idea to take a break from gluten for a while. 6 weeks is typically enough to repair the villi. Beneath the villi are microvilli, which are even tinier, and those need another 6 weeks. So if it's quite a severe, you're noticing a lot of bloating every time you eat gluten, you might want to give yourself a break for 6 to 12 weeks to see if that helps heal the lining of your small intestine. Now, there's not a lot of bacteria in the small intestine. Most of the bacteria that we associate with the digestive system, meaning the microbiome, will live in your large intestine. The large intestine is the final stage of digestion, and its main job is to remove water, so to dehydrate whatever you've eaten and allow that hydration to go back into your body. And whatever is left over is going to turn into solid stool. And there are trillions of microbes living in your microbiome, in your gut microbiome. There are microbiomes all over your body. We're talking about the gut microbiome. And they feed off of those waste products that you've just eaten. And whatever you just ate is going to determine which microbes are thriving and which ones are not so much thriving. Okay, so we want to be able to feed the more beneficial microbes lots and lots of food and try and starve or not feed the undesirable microbes. No matter what happens, you're always going to have both living in your gut. And by the way, what's beneficial for one person may not be beneficial for another. So we like to say, oh, I'm taking, this supplement that has all this bacteria in it and it's really good for everybody. It's not necessarily good for everybody. In some cases, it can make another person's symptoms worse or aggravate a specific condition, etc. So it's hard to know unless you do specific microbiome testing. But if you're just guessing, then just pay attention to how your body feels when you eat certain foods, and that will at least get you on the right path. Okay, so let's take a look here. Now, how do you know if there's something going wrong in your large intestine? Well, one indicator is acne that appears either on the chin, chest, or your back, or maybe all three. These signs usually represent toxins in the colon or maybe an imbalance of microbes in the colon. So you might want to consider changing your diet a little bit based on the recommendations I'm going to talk about now, or maybe doing even a colon cleanse that I think we'll have time to talk about it a little bit. One of the most common issues associated with the large intestine, of course, is constipation. Now, some people have the exact opposite problem where they're having diarrhea or loose stools all the time or several times a day. Sometimes that's called IBS or diagnosed as IBS. If we have time, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's talk about constipation because if you're working with clients now, or if you know somebody who's struggling with constipation, it can be really problematic. They don't even know how problematic it is, actually. But the top reasons for constipation are you're not eating enough fiber, or maybe you're eating fiber, but you're not getting enough water. Or maybe you're getting enough water, but not getting enough fiber. You need the two together. The water will keep the fiber nice and soft so that it can pass through your body. And low physical activity is another one too. And I like to give the example of a dog. If you have a dog and your dog didn't want to go out to poop for 2 or 3 days, you'd be panicking, right? It's the same with us. I showed you earlier the large intestine. It's in three segments, one meal in, one meal out. So when you eat a meal, it should push everything you had sitting in there already, push it through. Now, humans generally don't have three poops a day, so that one meal in, one meal out doesn't really apply to most of us, but you want to have at least one bowel movement a day. And it's not just enough to have a bowel movement, it's also important to make sure that your stools look healthy. And the Bristol stool chart is very helpful. It can help us identify whether or not your stool looks healthy or not. Now, type 4 is perfect. That's what we want our stool to look like. So it should be one smooth piece about an inch in diameter. And what that stool represents is the last part of your large intestine. But if it's coming out in little balls, like type 1 there, or if it's broken or misshapen, like 2 or 3, that could mean that there is an obstruction in your gut somewhere. Maybe you're dehydrated. Maybe you haven't had enough fiber and you're pushing and trying to force out your stool. And then the types 5, 6, and 7 are there's too much water. So they're soft and they come out as soft blobs or as very loose stools. And that usually indicates that stool has not spent enough time in your colon. So it isn't dehydrated enough. So types 1, 2, and 3 are too dehydrated, and 5, 6, and 7 are not dehydrated enough. So something has irritated your gut and forced out the contents before they were ready to pass through your body. So now you have to play detective and try and figure out why your stool looks like this. So, there's lots and lots of different reasons. Keeping a food journal helps. And also making sure you're reaching your fiber targets. And for most of us, that's going to be somewhere between 25 and 35 grams every single day, which is not always easy to achieve. Most Canadians and Americans are consuming somewhere between 13 and 15 grams of fiber a day. Not nearly enough, right? That's about half. Some of the top sources are beans and lentils. I love lentils. I love beans too, but lentils are my favorite because, first of all, they are high in fiber. They cook really quickly, especially the little ones like this, the red split lentils. They're also very high in protein. So just to give you an example here, 1/5 of a cup here of dried lentils is going to provide 6 grams of fiber and 8 grams of protein in a fifth of a cup. So I will gladly eat 1 cup of lentils easily. Like, I mean, I'd lentil soup, just add them to the salad or just have them as a side dish. I love lentils and a lentil loaf. You can do all kinds of things with them. So you get a lot of fiber and you get a lot of protein. And thirdly, they're inexpensive. So in this day and age when food is astronomically priced, it is helpful to know that there are some excellent fiber and protein sources that are still affordable. So that's a good one to stock up on and they last a long time. Fruits and veggies don't have as much fiber as you would expect, actually. So even eating a salad, you may only get about 2 or 3 grams of fiber in that salad. So it is helpful to add some extra fiber whenever you can. It's handy to have a bag of chia seeds around at home, and you can sprinkle chia into different foods that you're eating, like over a salad or into yogurt, into a smoothie. Another one that's one of my favorites is ground flaxseed. I buy them whole and then grind up about a cup full of flaxseed every week and just keep it in a sealed container in the fridge or in a cool spot in my kitchen. And then I'll add that to, again, smoothies or different foods that I'm eating, usually Greek yogurt, for example. You can add some granola if you like, or some nuts and seeds. There's so many options for basically like any plant food that's not refined or stripped away of its fiber is going to provide you with some fiber. And if you're going to increase the amount of fiber that you eat, you want to do it very slowly so that you don't overdo it, because overdoing it is just going to make you more constipated and contribute to gas and bloating. So increase it slowly and make sure that it's accompanied by enough water to keep everything nice and soft so that you can pass it out. And when I work with clients, I usually recommend that if they're going to add more fiber, wait until you have a bowel movement before you increase it again. So if you've gone from 15 grams to say 20 grams, have a bowel movement and then add 5 more grams. So slowly, incrementally increasing the fiber after each poop. Okay, how do we address constipation? Well, there are some natural laxatives. Most people are familiar with magnesium, and most people are familiar with magnesium because it happened quite by accident. So they decided to take some magnesium and they purchased magnesium citrate, and next thing you knew, they were running to the toilet. It is a natural laxative if you take too much of it. So magnesium has so many benefits, but if you're not prepared for that effect, and if you've taken a little bit too much, then that's what you will experience. So put that in your back pocket for one of those times when you just haven't had enough fiber or you need that extra support. Vitamin C is another option too. And sometimes when I have a client who's quite constipated, I'll recommend that they just keep taking 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C until they experience loose stools, just to clear out what's in there, and then we can work on getting things back in balance. So that might take a couple of days to sort out, but that's okay. It's not going to hurt you if you only do it for the short term. Now, what will hurt you if you continually take it is something like Senna. Senna is quite strong, and it is not it stimulates the nerves in the gut to speed up your bowel movements, but your large intestine can become dependent on Senna. And if you take it continually over time, the muscles of your, just like if you don't exercise, if something was exercising for you and all you had to do was sit on the couch, you would stop moving, right? Why bother? It's the same with your large intestine. The muscles won't be toned enough to work on their own if they become reliant on Senna. Okay, some other options. Oh, prunes. Prunes are amazing, and they work. It only takes 2 or 3 prunes, but my preferred choice for prunes is, and this is just something I came across myself when I had some surgery and just needed some help fast. I buy those baby food pouches, prunes. They're usually like $2, and honestly, just a teaspoon in something that you're eating, like some yogurt, will take care of it. So that's a really great option, and those little pouches will last about a week. So really, it's a small investment, $2 a week for one of these pouches, and it doesn't taste so bad either. Probiotics, of course, I'll get to those in a moment. And then another one that I recommend quite often is belly massage. Now, you always want to massage in the direction of your colon. So from the last step of your colon is where you massage at the end. So you're going from right to left. And ideally, you can poke around, go up the right side of your body, across under your breastbone, which is your transverse colon, and down your descending colon, and you might feel where you're a little bit compacted. Sometimes you can manually loosen up some debris that's stuck in there. And if you do this at night before you go to bed, and if that's too complicated, just massage from right to left continually. You can use a tennis ball or a baseball and roll it around. That helps a lot, especially if you're quite compacted. So you'll notice that in the morning, you're more likely to have a better bowel movement because you've just helped your belly along. This isn't something you want to do all the time, but when you need that extra support, it's very helpful. Also, I used to work at a colon hydrotherapy center and I learned all the tricks there. Twisting, squatting, sit-ups, just contracting. Remember, if you had a baby, I used to do this with both my kids when they had a little bit of gas. I would just take their knees and their legs and kind of go in and out and in and out until they release some gas. So it's the same idea. You're just kind of moving around to move the contents of your bowels, moving your bowels. And then a last resort would be an enema or a colonic. There are colon hydrotherapy centers pretty much everywhere. You just need to find a good one that's clean and that does a pretty thorough job. I used to work at a colon hydrotherapy center, like I said. And so I saw firsthand and experienced firsthand what the benefits could be. And it's quite remarkable. We had, oh my goodness, we had patients who, had rosacea and they noticed that their rosacea would clear up after one or two treatments. IBS noticed that there was much less loose stools, much fewer loose stools after a few treatments. Uh, I'd walk out with a completely flat belly, thinking that the fat that was there was fat, but it was not at all. It was just gas and bloat, and it's quite interesting. And then when you have a fresh start like that, you really see which foods become or are problematic for you when most of the time we just are unaware. Now, the fascination with the gut microbiome has just been increasing. It's been about 15 years now that we've really dug in, and we can thank Activia Yogurt for starting this whole body of research because no one really paid attention. We've known about the microbiome for hundreds, a couple of hundred years actually, and most cultures around the world had some kind of fermented probiotic rich food that they would eat on a regular basis. But we pretty much ignored our microbiome until just over a decade ago. So now there is an incredible amount of research and published studies that have linked what's going on in this ecosystem with pretty much everything that's going on in your body. It's quite staggering actually. So digestion, of course, it's part of the gut. So we always look there first, knowing that the gut microbiome plays a role in breaking down complex carbohydrates, some proteins, some fats that manage to reach the lower gastrointestinal tract. The bacteria that live there make short chain fatty acids, which are so important to our health because they provide energy for our intestinal cells and they support the gut lining, which is absolutely critical. We've learned over the past couple of decades that the gut lining protects us from inflammation and even from autoimmune diseases. And when we hear about autoimmune diseases being linked with the microbiome, that's what they're talking about, is that the gut lining has lost its integrity and bacteria has passed into the bloodstream, which is then creating inflammation in your blood, which contributes to a heightened immune state, which eventually leads to autoimmune disease. Sorry, I knew that was a little bit of a long explanation there, but multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, lupus, all rheumatoid arthritis, so many autoimmune diseases are being linked back to the gut and the gut microbiome. So that is where you want to be thinking if you're dealing with this condition. So it's way beyond digestion, it's way beyond energy metabolism. Energy metabolism means that some of the microbes that are living in your gut make B vitamins, my favorite set of vitamins, because they help us with energy. They also help break down carbs, fats, and proteins. Skin health, I always go right to the gut. If I've got a client with eczema or acne or psoriasis or pretty much any skin condition, let's see what's going on in the gut. Let's heal the gut first, and hopefully the skin will heal as well. Your immune system, 70% of immune cells are in the gut. It's got its own immune system, as a matter of fact, that works with the immune system in other parts of the body. Our mental health and our brain, our cognition are very closely tied to the gut via the gut brain axis and the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve of the body. So gut microbes are constantly making neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, so important, more in the gut than are being made in the rest of the body, as a matter of fact. So, in fact, 90% of serotonin is made in the gut. And also our metabolic health. So, blood glucose regulation, especially when you eat foods like polyphenols, like berries and olive oil and dark chocolate, and even some coffee and tea. The polyphenols in these foods feed certain microbes like Akkermansia muciniphila, for example, my favorite, which then will help regulate your blood sugar levels. So it's amazing. It's like making GLP inside your own body. Cardiovascular disease. Now, that's kind of a complicated explanation. But we know that the short chain fatty acids that are made by the healthy microbes have protective effects on our heart and also on our blood pressure. Inflammation I talked about already. So many important roles, and this really is just the tip of the iceberg. So, like I said, there are 100 trillion microbes living in your body right now, and about 1,000 species of microbes living just in your digestive tract. Now, these are affected by everything you eat. So, it's not like you can get away with eating 80% of your calories from junk food. Every single thing that you eat counts. Everything you eat is going to feed certain microbes in your gut. So, it's either feeding the beneficial microbes or it's feeding the undesirable microbes. So keep that in mind when you eat. We want to make sure that we're eating foods that support the microbiome, and I'll get to those in a few minutes. Now, antibiotics will wipe out up to half of the microbes that are living in the gut. So if you're taking antibiotics, it's really important to follow up, especially if they're broad spectrum, to follow up with some probiotic foods and even supplements afterwards. And certain medications will wipe out about 25% of the microbes living in the gut, good and bad. Your environment too, the people you live with. If you have an outdoor environment, I've got woods in my backyard, and ever since I learned about this, I make an effort to get out into my backyard and walk around, because just being around soil, around trees, it helps promote a more balanced and healthy microbiome in your own body. And keep in mind that stress can also change the integrity of your gut lining. It can weaken your gut lining so that, again, inflammation can happen, or substances can pass through into your bloodstream. So there's a lot going on there that we just do not see. Now, the goal is for all of us is to try and feed the beneficial microbes and starve or not feed the undesirable ones. Now, the ones that are listed here on the bottom row there, those are some known harmful microbes like E. coli, for example, or C. difficile, but there are many others, hundreds of other strains living in your gut right now that we also don't want to feed. And like I said, the ones at the top, these are generally beneficial for most people, like lactobacillus, which is the type you're going to find in yogurt, Akkermansia, which is the one that's associated with blood sugar balancing. And then there's a few others that are generally considered either keystone species, which are, there's not a lot of them, but they play really significant roles in the gut. So those are the ones that we do want to feed. And we can do that with eating probiotic foods. These are foods that already supply probiotics, live microorganisms that contribute to the beneficial microbes that are already living in your body. So kefir, I have a coconut kefir all the way over there and a dairy kefir here. We have, my kids love the dairy kefir so much. We have 3 bottles open in my fridge right now. My kids love this, and I've noticed such a big change in their body when they do eat it, in their skin, in their health, even in their cognition and their mood. That's a big one when they're teenagers, right? So I don't mind them having this. And we don't have a lot of sugar in our household. Kimchi or fermented vegetables is another excellent source, like sauerkraut. But the sauerkraut, the jar that's sitting in the aisle of your grocery store, that doesn't have active microbes in it. You want to get the sauerkraut or the kimchi that's in the refrigerator, that's been fermented the traditional way. Fermented vegetables, you can make yourself. Easy. Just check it out on YouTube. It does not take long at all. And you can ferment pretty much any vegetable. You just need a clean jar, some water, and some salt. It's actually really easy. Now, yogurt, I prefer Greek yogurt because it has more protein. And if it's organic, it has more microbes generally. Also miso, tempeh, and even kombucha. So you've got lots and lots of options. You just want to make sure that you're getting a small amount of probiotics every day. But it's not just about probiotics. There are lots of ways to support your microbiome. So the first one that I want to mention here, and don't be overwhelmed by this because it's not as complicated as it sounds, is consuming 30 unique plant foods each and every week. And this came out of a big study that showed that those who ate more than 30 plant foods a week, unique, right? So it's not eating flaxseed every day. It's flaxseed one day, plus chia, plus, sunflower seeds, plus, and you've got so many categories: fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, those count too. So putting 2 or 3 different herbs and a couple of spices in your meals will add up really, really quickly. And whole grains, of course. So there's lots of options: beans, too, lentils, lots of options. It's actually quite easy to accumulate 30 different plant foods if you just make an effort to have more variety in your diet. We also want to make sure that we're getting somewhere between 25 to 30 grams of fiber each and every day. And those polyphenol foods that I mentioned, berries, any kind, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, a few of those here and there. I like frozen blueberries in my Greek yogurt, usually for breakfast. So good. Olive oil or olives, cocoa, tea, coffee. There are actually lots and lots of foods that provide polyphenols, and usually they're indicated by color. The more color, the more polyphenols. Probiotic foods are superior to probiotic supplements because you get a variety of microbes, whereas the supplements will usually just give you a few. Like this one, I think only has like 2 or 3 different types of probiotic strains in it, which is okay. It's the important one, but it's not gonna fix all your issues. So you're better off doing it with food, and studies repeatedly show that food is much more effective and beneficial. Okay, and then we have prebiotics, and prebiotics feed the probiotics already living in your gut. So, chia seeds, garlic, and onions, bananas, Jerusalem artichokes. There's a long list of these as well. Generally, foods that are high in fiber will have some prebiotic value, not all, but they definitely help. And even if those foods don't have prebiotics, just the fiber alone will help feed some beneficial microbes. So that's the whole goal, is to feed your microbes. My son, when he was really small, he had some skin problems, and his skin problems cleared up when he started using kefir. So I talk about this all the time because it was so life changing for both of us. But I described it to him as there are soldiers fighting in your body, in your gut, to protect your whole body. And even now, he just turned 14, and he every time he drinks kefir or eats some kind of probiotic food, he says, "Mom, I've increased my soldiers today. I've got a lot more soldiers living in my gut, and I feel so much better." So he thinks he feels better when he consumes more, and I hope he does notice it. I'm glad that he's aware of what's going on in his body. Now, to repair some damage in your gut lining, one of the most effective supplements is L-glutamine. You can take it as directed. Generally, it's 3 times a day on an empty stomach. And L-glutamine is an amino acid that does help repair the lining. It's not a quick process. It'll take several weeks or months to see results, but it does work. And I find myself recommending it a lot to clients. And another really good option that I would encourage all of us to include in our diet as often as possible is bone broth. Easy as collecting bones from the foods that you eat, putting everything, all the bones in a slow cooker, letting it cook for 12 hours, straining it, containerizing it, freezing. Always have some in the freezer and always have some in the fridge. We use it to make rice or pasta or soup, or in the wintertime, we'll just sip on a quarter cup of warmed bone broth. And it's one of the most healing substances you can put in your body, and is very effective for reducing inflammation and pain. And the anti-inflammatory diet in general is very effective. Okay, so if you decide you want to try a colon cleanse, you can do this a million different ways. Typically, you want to up your water to make sure everything gets flushed out, up your probiotics, up your fiber gradually. You can try a colon cleansing kit from a health food store. Just be careful. Some of them are very aggressive. I find I don't even recommend those anymore. I would rather clients just did it naturally with these ingredients. But in some cases, it is necessary, especially if they're dealing with like a dysbiosis condition or candida. Sometimes the colon kit works really, really well. So check out your health food store, speak to someone there, and look for a product that you feel is right for you. colonic irrigation, which is the same thing as a colonic that I mentioned earlier. Find a clinic that is safe and clean, really important. Or you can get an enema kit. That's what you're seeing in the picture there. You can buy this from the pharmacy or from online and do it in the bathtub. Now, the enema kit doesn't obviously clean out your entire colon. It'll just reach the last segment and it doesn't go very far, but you would have to do it repeatedly to clear yourself out. And this is very effective if you are constipated for a long time or if you're just recovering from an illness and you just want to clean everything up. And there are different things that you can put in the enema in the enema to help kind of exfoliate or scrub away your colon, like coffee grounds. You'll figure that out when you get there. And it's going to take about 3 weeks to 3 months for this process to be achieved. And if you suspect parasites, and a lot of us have parasites, oh my gosh, I could tell you stories. I've seen a worm crawl out of somebody's breast, a woman with breast cancer. I watched a parasite crawl out of her breast. I saw scans of a person with parasites in their brain. It's kind of terrifying, but these things live within us. If you're around animals, if you have pets, especially cats, or if you're around horses, it's a good idea to do a parasite cleanse. If you've been traveling to a different country, I would do a parasite cleanse upon return. And you can do them simply, or you can buy a parasite kit again from the health food store and try it that way. Black walnut is very effective, especially, I know this is going to sound weird, especially if you do it around the full moon, because that's when parasites lay their eggs. You know, everything in nature has synchronicity. And yes, this is the schedule. This is when parasites lay their eggs. So just before a full moon, you want to take some black walnut oil for several days, and you'll notice little bits of, it looks like popcorn pieces in your stool, and that is the parasite eggs. Wormwood and cloves will actually kill parasites. They weaken the parasite, their membranes, so they can't survive. Cloves are amazing. Like just buy some cloves and like scrape some into a protein shake or in a coffee or tea or something, a smoothie. Delicious, and it will kill parasites. Garlic is also a very, very powerful parasite cleanse, and even pumpkin seeds are effective. So lots of options there too. Okay, so it's just before the hour, and I'm just going to wrap it up here. To remind you again, we just launched our updated, new and improved digestive health and the human microbiome course, which is now in 3 modules. There, I had such a good time writing these modules. It was incredible the amount of research that we have now, even compared to 3 years ago when we last updated the digestive course. So we take a deep dive into the gut health protocols, and there are many more to choose from. And these are like copy and paste. So when you have a client, you just turn to that particular condition like SIBO or dysbiosis, and all of the instructions are there. Everything you need to know to work with that client is listed there for you. So it helps a lot with your private practice. And I just also wanted to mention that this, at some point, hopefully this summer, we're going to be launching a certified perimenopause and menopause health coach program for those who are working with women in midlife. And that's it. And just again, quick reminder that Heather and I both worked on this book, Nourishing Menopause, which is flying to the top of the charts right now. Yay! Okay, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves or type your question into the chat. And of course, Heather and I are always available to answer questions following the seminar. So please feel free to message us at healthcoachcollaborative.ca anytime. Thanks for being here and enjoy the rest of your day.